Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the League Racing TV YouTube channel for the final week of the TTML Sprint League rounds 21 and 22. My name is Aidan Carter, otherwise known as Carmentis. I'll be taking you through proceedings as always on a Wednesday evening, and joining me in the commentary box for the last time this season is Luke Etheridge. Luke, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks. Good evening, Aidan. Good evening to everyone who's watching. We've got a pretty interesting title battle on our hands. 2 races remaining, 17 points between Scuba, who is currently leading, and Perpetuum. It should be really good. Brazil, we know, always provides good racing, and we were discussing just before the stream started. To be fair, Abu Dhabi is one of them tracks on the F1 game where in real life it can be a bit dull, but on the game, again, provides some good action.
Yeah, definitely. We've noticed that kind of a trend maybe with a lot of tracks on this game that maybe don't provide good racing in real life but provide great races on this game. I think another example of that is probably the circuit Paul Ricard, where in real life maybe racing isn't amazing, but on this game racing seems to be very close around that circuit. So Abu Dhabi is going to be a little bit less of a climax than it is, anti-climax that is, than it is in real life. So these 2 races should be good, and like you said, a close battle here for the title. We did a little bit of a discussion about what the permutations are for the championship today. If Perpetuum wins both races, gets fastest up in both races, and gets pole position in both races today, Scuba needs to finish second in both of those races, and he will win the championship by a single point. Beyond that, we can't really calculate that much further because we're not that good at maths. So we'll probably work it out as it goes along, but tonight Perpetuum is just going to have to go all guns blazing if he wants to win this.
Yes, definitely. I think the one thing that could be crucial is if we get a situation like last week where, of course, in America, in the end, Perpetuum ended up invalidating his qualifying lap and then picked up a few penalties trying to fight his way back through the field. That could really cost him, because if he invalidates, I think it would be Scuba would fancy his chances of getting the pole position and getting them extra 2 points. So that could be a big swing. We'll have to wait and see how it goes. Brazil is a really short track as well, so there should be plenty of action, and qualifying should be really close.
It definitely should be, yeah. We're just going to run you through the rest of the top 10 in the standings then. So third place in the standings is Graham89. He's on 279 points. He's not mathematically within a shot of the title, but he's all but secured third place in the standings today with Tekken not being here. Mays would need to have at least, I believe, 2 second places in these 2 races to try and overhaul Graham in the points, which would be very difficult to do. Mays is in 5th then behind Tekken. Then it's Cam in 6th, ahead of Keeper in 7th. Faxand, Cowboy and Honeybadger round off the top 10 in the driver standings. And in the teams standings, McLaren still lead the way, but only by 27 points now over AlphaTauri, with Mercedes, Red Bull, Alfa Romeo and Ferrari all very close behind. So it's still up to all to play for, really, in the manufacturer standings along with the driver standings. And we head to the first track of the evening, the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache. Great track this one. There's very few corners, like you said. It's a short track, quite a short one of the shortest tracks on the calendar in terms of length and in terms of time, but has provided some great races in the past. We'll wait and see who we go on board with for qualifying around this 15 cornered circuit, but there's only really about 12 corners you actually really need to think about. We're just waiting for Sidus to get ready, and we are on board then with Charlie for a lap around this circuit. He heads uphill then towards the braking zone for turn 1. Very easy to outbrake yourself here, and Charlie has a little bit of a lock-up but gets it stopped nicely in through turn 2 and then through the long turn 3 through the Seniases, and now down this second of 2 DRS straights on this track. Mays and Sidus have already invalidated their lap times, it seems, as you come down towards turn 4. Heavy braking zone, great overtaking opportunity in the race through turns 5 and then up the hill towards the double apex of turns 6 and 7. Very, very fast corner this one is. Make sure that you get it nice and neat on the inside of the corner. Don't run out too wide. And now into the slower part of the lap. A lot of slow hairpins in quick succession here through 8 and then downhill through turn 9. Very easy to lose the rear car on the exit, as Charlie proves there. And then into turn 10. Bit cambered this one, so you can take a little bit more speed than maybe you first thought. Down the hill through turn 11. Easy flat corner this one is in the dry. And then into the last corner, Zhengshao, turn 12. Last proper corner on the track. Cam has invalidated his time. And the lap is already over pretty much. It's just flat out now from the line. We're going through turn 14 and turn 15, the last corner of the lap. And it looks like Perpetuum might be picking up those crucial qualifying points as they come up to the line. And he does with a 1 minute 6.8. Perpetuum picks up the first pole position of the evening, but crucially for Scuba, he's second on the grid. So Scuba's doing all he needs to do, at the moment at least, to try and secure that championship.
Yes, and I think crucially, I think the one person that Scuba might have been worried about could have been Cam. We've seen him pick up a few pole positions this season. He invalidated his lap and then ended up retiring from the session, so he's down in 11th. That could be very important for the constructors. Just looking at the state of the constructors, as you mentioned earlier, Ferrari have got both of their drivers here tonight. I think Williams have got both of theirs as well, as have AlphaTauri, Mercedes as well. That could just cost McLaren. We'll have to wait and see.
It really does. Cam is just holding the torch at the moment. He's just trying desperately to hold on to that lead in the manufacturers, which they've held pretty much from the start. So it's Perpetuum from Scuba, Faxland third, and then Graham, Charlie, Siege on the medium, sixth on the grid. That was a good lap time for him. Neymar, Besserud, and Law is the last person to set a valid lap time. We had 3 people not setting times in the end. Silas Mays, I didn't quite catch who the last driver was actually. I believe it was Cam. Sorry, yeah, it was Cam was the other person that didn't set a lap time. So 3 people at the back of the grid then that will be hoping to make their way through the field. But the good thing for the people at the back of the field is that Brazil is a relatively easy track to overtake at.
Yes, definitely. There's 2 DRS zones, one into turn 1, which is where you'll see the majority of the overtaking, but it is possible to have a go into turn 4 as well. I don't think Scuba's going to be too bothered about that. I think he's just going to be probably thinking about just hang on the back of Perpetuum, and then if he's maybe when we get to about halfway point through the race, if Perpetuum hasn't pitted yet, then he'll probably go in the lap before just to try and get that undercut and see if he could end up taking the victory in this race. As we said, that one fastest lap point could be very important as well. If it goes Scuba's way, that just makes it a little bit harder. Although you might expect that to go to maybe someone outside the top 10 like Cam, who's very quick as well and could possibly start on the alternate strategy.
Definitely, yeah. People that were going for the softs at the end of the race, you would imagine, would have the pace. And around this track, fresh tyres does seem to be key. While the degradation isn't very high around this circuit, it seems to be very, it seems to not be too bad, the tyre wear around this track. The undercut here is quite powerful because of the middle sector, really. The middle sector, a lot of corners in quick succession, a lot of slow corners in quick succession. And around there, traction is crucial. So fresh tyres in that middle sector really do pay dividends.
Yes, definitely. That's where it's a bit of a setup compromise about this track. I know I end up saying that about a lot of circuits, but Sector 1 and Sector 3 here, it's pretty much all just... I mean, Sector 3 is basically... once you've got out of Young's Out, it's all flat out. And then Sector 1 as well, a few straight. Sector 2, it's all about traction, all about keeping it nice and twisted. They sort of kept that tight section when they changed the track layout for the return of Interlagos in the early 1990s. Which is good to see, and it does make it very difficult. And like you said, that will really cost you on traction. If you find your tyres out ever so slightly, you're going to be slow through there. But also, if you get stuck behind someone else who's on an older set of tyres, you could easily lose a second or two just in that one sector alone.
You really could, yeah. Unfortunately, we've got a little bit of a delay of getting onto the formation app. I don't know if you're experiencing the same thing on your end, unfortunately, Luke, but we have got a little bit of a delay. So hopefully we can get this race underway and get ready for the penultimate round of the season. But coming into this race, you would imagine that Perpetuum is going to maybe run away with this one and Scuba's just going to try and hold on to second. But that battle for third is quite a difficult one. Who do you think maybe we could see on that third step of the podium?
To be honest, Faxland has shown some good pace at various points this season. I think, though, if I had to go for someone, Siege is on the was on that alternate strategy, I believe, and he did get his first podium last time around in America, so it wouldn't surprise me if we do see that. We are seeing a host migration, so I do wonder if the lobby is about to die, or no, we seem to have got into the lobby all of a sudden, so hopefully we're getting underway.
I've seen the host of the lobby leave, and I've got a little bit of a problem on my end. There we go. But we've got a lot of people leaving the lobby, so I think we may be having a lobby reset. I think someone disconnected maybe during qualifying or some sort like that, just at the end of qualifying, and it's just caused a glitch in the lobby. So we are going to be getting a new lobby for everyone. So a little bit of a delay to the start of the penultimate round of the season, but that just gives us more time to really look through the rest of the field and kind of reflect on the first season of the Sprint League. It's been a little bit up and down for a lot of drivers throughout the field. Of the people that are in the field today, is there anyone else that's really caught your eye this season? I've got my eye on someone in particular, but who else has been really a surprise for you this season?
I'd say Cam's qualifying pace has been very impressive, to be honest. It's just a shame for him he's not been able to do it in the race. And the way some of these other drivers have stepped up as well, Graham's consistency has been there. And there has been odd occasions where he's shown some really good pace as well. Then at the other end of the scale, I'd say I probably expected a bit more from Siege. I know he had a few problems, so it's been a bit disappointing at the first part of the season. He has stepped it up, though, recently.
He definitely has. Yeah, Siege has stepped it up, and he's just outside the top 10 at the moment in 11th place in the standings, only 14 points behind Honey Badger and 16 points behind Callboy, and I believe they're both not here today, so possibility there for Siege to get inside the top 10 at the end of the season. But yeah, Graham was the one I was going to mention, actually. Third in the standings, pretty much secure in third place in the standings if he finishes the first race today, and Mays doesn't finish inside the top, I think inside the top 2 at least, then pretty much Graham has secured that third place in the standings. And like you say, while he hasn't had maybe the outright speed at some places, he has been incredibly consistent, and no matter what seems to happen to him in a race, whether it's an incident or maybe some sort of spin or anything that goes wrong in the pit lane, Graham always seems to recover really well.
Yeah, he does, definitely. I mean, the race is getting underway here, and I don't think we've quite got confirmation yet of invites to a new lobby, so we are underway for this race. Perpetuum getting a decent start. I think Scuba's actually disconnected at this moment in time, and I think Perpetuum might be as well, so there's a lot of AI cars going around at this moment in time. This would be ideal for Graham, to be perfectly honest, just to go third in the championship if he's still on his own. I think it's Siege is one of the few still in the lobby because he seems to be blasting his way through the field at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably staying in the lobby. Probably a good idea maybe for him to stay in the lobbies. I've just got an invite now from Mays, so we are confirmed of a second lobby. I think Siege maybe just staying in the lobby, maybe trying to get a feeling for those medium tyres at the start of the race, just to see what they are like off the line. And that's another thing to note about this circuit, is that coming up the hill, obviously the start line here is right on an incline in the hill, so getting off the line at Brazil can be a little bit difficult.
It's very awkward with the way the grid is. So it's not just on an incline. The front of the grid, you're uphill.
Yeah.
So thankfully on this game, you don't have to hold the brake. But I've heard it described by drivers in real Formula 1 of saying you've almost got to do a hill start. You've got to be holding it on the brake at the same time to avoid rolling backwards. Yes, it makes you slow at the start, but because there's more weight on the rear of the car, you actually get better traction. If you're in the middle of the grid, you're on the flat. If you're at the back of the grid, you get the benefit of the downhill, but there's more weight on the front than on the rear, so it is actually a bit easier to spin the wheel. So it is quite a tricky... I'd say it's probably the most tricky grid in Formula 1 to get a good start on.
It definitely is, and then you've also got that. It's a fairly short run really into turn one. There's not really much of a run into that corner, and then beyond turn one, obviously you have the center S's, so there's not a lot of room for a lot of drivers to really maneuver around. And we've seen a lot of times in real life Formula 1. I think one that specifically stands in my mind was the start of the 2009 race, where it is very, very easy for the cars to concertina up on the exit of the second corner, and you can see a lot of crashes in turn two here.
Yeah, sometimes you've got drivers trying it round the outside, trying it round the inside, and they just seem to come together at turn two when they're perhaps paying too much attention to one side of their car rather than the other, and it is very easy to pick up contact and a front wing, and it can get very tight as well, then coming through three and then down into fourth place. It's very interesting indeed at times.
It definitely is interesting. It's interesting to see how it plays out for a lot of drivers. It's maybe caution is the better part of valor at this lap, especially with the long run you have down into turn one at the start of the second lap. And I think maybe a lot of times people may be trying to rush to get moves done down through turns 1 and 2, because while there is obviously a straight down towards turn 4, it's not a relatively long straight, and then past turn 4, it is fairly difficult to run side by side around this track without any sort of contact coming into play.
Yeah, definitely. Quite often you will see drivers pick up penalties when they're coming through turn 4, and if not, they'll go all the way up the hill trying to go into Ferragiova, that almost double apex right-hander at the top of the hill, and that normally doesn't end well. You remember you mentioned the 2009 race, it was Jarno Trulli and Adrian Sutil, where Trulli very bravely was having a go at Sutil, and I think it carried on until the next race weekend, quite amazingly. They were still having a go at each other at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix afterwards, so hopefully they all keep it nice and clean tonight, especially on lap 1 as well, because we've said it before, with this 25% sprint race, you get in trouble on the first lap and you have to replace a front wing, it can really cost you.
It really can, yeah. I actually remember that press conference that they did at Abu Dhabi, because I think Jarno Trulli turned up with pictures of the incident and tried to show them in the press conference. That was a bit of a bizarre press conference. And another incident that was kind of similar to that was 2017, where we saw Ocon have his first retirement in Formula 1 after contact with, I believe it was Grosjean in the Haas car, down into that corner as well. Grosjean trying to go down the inside, getting into the corner a little bit too hot and taking Ocon himself really out of that race, and Ocon as well. One thing to note though, just going into this race then, we're just getting ready for the start of this race, and we're just letting Mays set up the custom grid. One thing to note, we now have another driver in the lobby, and that is Recon. Now, Recon could play a very big part in this championship because, as we may recall, he took part in the races in Hungary and Belgium. Won Hungary quite convincingly, was going to win at Belgium before a late race spin, and when he was last in the round, I think the last time he raced was in the Russian round, he showed good pace there even without a setup on, so Recon could play a real factor in this championship today.
Yeah, definitely. He will be started at the back of the grid from this race, obviously, because qualifying's already happened, so maybe not so much in this race, although again, starting on a harder set of tyres, if he chooses to do so outside of the top 10, could work out for him, and maybe he'll have a chance of getting on the podium. He could definitely get up there in Abu Dhabi, and this is probably going to help Perpetuum, I reckon, because Recon, I'd expect, has got a better chance of beating Scuba than he has of beating Perpetuum, so this might not be what the Irishman wanted.
Absolutely not. No, I think now this puts more pressure on Scuba to really make a name for himself in the first race tonight, because obviously, like you say, Recon will be starting at the back of the grid with this custom grid that we are just getting ready into. So that's one thing to note. Scuba's really going to have to make the most of this race, and if we come to Abu Dhabi, he's got to hope that if Recon is ahead of him, then Recon's going to be ahead of Perpetuum as well. That's kind of his best hope, maybe, for Abu Dhabi, because other than that, we could see Scuba finishing that race in third and Perpetuum possibly winning the race, and that would give the championship to Perpetuum. So it's very close between those two. I think Perpetuum's hoping that Recon's going to be his best friend tonight.
Yeah, definitely. He might just be as well. He might just get in the way. Although, saying that, he could end up beating him as well. So we'll have to wait and see how it just goes now. Perpetuum, he needs to keep it clean. We've seen him a few times pick up penalties, especially when he started lower down. So the good news for him is on pole position. And obviously that means the gap has now gone down to 15 points with one race and two races and one qualifying session to go. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this Brazilian Grand Prix goes. And this has just built up the tension ever so slightly. What it does mean, though, that alternate strategy won't be effective because everyone who started in the top 10 on the soft tyres and Siege who started on the mediums, they've now got a brand new set of those tyres.
Yeah, I was just about, you're going to take the words out of my mouth there, actually, that, yeah, they're going to be on a fresh set of tyres, so that could clearly really help those drivers on the soft compound tyres, and they're not going to struggle too much with tyre wear. As we've seen a lot of times this season, a 25% race doesn't necessarily mean double the tyre wear that you see in a 50% race, and just from previous experience around this track, you can run over half distance on the soft compound tyres around this track and not struggle really with tyre wear towards the end of the race or the midpoint of the race if you're starting on those tyres. So look out for maybe people that might be starting on the mediums to pit before lap 9 in this race and put a set of soft compound tyres on, and especially with that undercut that we mentioned a little bit earlier, it is maybe a better idea to run a shorter stint on the medium tyres. So we should see hopefully everyone starting on the same tyres that they qualified on, so Siege should be on the mediums, and then everyone from 10th down, I believe, has free choice of tyres. We'll just have a double check and see. Siege is on those mediums. Cam and Recon have gone for the mediums, as you would expect at the back of the grid, going for something a little bit different. Where do you think the likes of Cam and Recon can get in this race?
I think Cam, he seems to enjoy the second race better than the first race, so I don't want to presume too much. And I know we did have connection issues last time around, as Silas seems to have just stayed parked on the grid, so I hope he's woken up. I mean, he's clearly here because he accepted the invite, but I'm not quite sure why he wouldn't choose to go around. I think they could easily get top 5 in this race, the pair of them. It wouldn't surprise me if they can manage to get their way ahead of Faxland and Graham, but I'd expect it to be a Perpetuum Scuba Siege podium. Whether Siege can get himself in between the two championship rivals, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and obviously this race does depend as well on how aggressive Siege is. We've seen in the past a lot from Siege. He is very fast, he does have a lot of pace, he's very consistent, but maybe when it comes to wheel-to-wheel battles, Siege tends to be quite hesitant, doesn't he? He doesn't really go for the late moves or any kind of dives, he doesn't go for anything risky. Sometimes it works out in his favour and he's benefiting on other people's mistakes, but a lot of the time it tends to hold him back just a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're going for this alternate strategy, you need to go for those aggressive moves when you're on the soft tyres and the cars around you on the mediums, especially around this circuit. We said you might get stuck behind someone in Sector 2. You can't really afford, let's say, starting Sector 2 around some of the twistier parts around Turn 7. If you get stuck behind someone, you can't afford to wait until the centre S because he'll have lost about a second on the cars around him, and that could really make a difference. So he might need to get his elbows out here a bit more than he's used to.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how this one's going to pan out for Siege. Is the alternate strategy the best way to go? Or is starting on the soft tyres the best way to go? We'll find out at the end of this race, but everyone is lined up on the grid then for the penultimate round of the season. Who of our championship contenders is going to get the best start? It's lights out and away they go, and it looks like Scuba actually might have got the better start, but the second phase, I think Perpetuum's got it. No, Scuba, a great second phase as well, and Scuba into the lead of the race, into turn 1. Perpetuum, not the best start off the line. Silas hasn't left the grid, so he wasn't there at the start of this race, unfortunately, so he might get disqualified, but it's Scuba with the best start. He leads coming down towards turn 4. Perpetuum drops down into second place. Faxland has held on to third ahead of Graham and Charlie, I believe, who have stayed 4th and 5th place in this race. Siege has dropped to place so far to Neymar, as Silas has been disqualified from the session for staying on the grid. So yeah, it's relatively normal at the front of the field, apart from Neymar gaining a place in the AlphaTauri. Recon, though, from 13th on the grid is already into 9th, looking at 8th, has a bit of contact there with the law, but gets away with it. But Recon already up into 9th place. Oh, yes, make that 8th as... Oh, sorry to jump in there. Make that 8th as the law has just spun there, coming out of turn 9, and that's him now down to the back of the field.
Yeah, such a shame for the law on his debut in the Haas. I think he's got away without any damage, though. Just can't really tell from that camera angle on my screen. He has done as well. Scuba, though, with an absolute dream start. Just got it all hooked up. Fetchum, don't know if he just didn't have a lot of revs. It didn't look like there was a lot of wheel spin, so I think he just bogged down ever so slightly. Scuba's in the ideal position now. It's just whether he can hold on to that lead. He knows he might not have to defend too much because he might want to extend these tyres ever so slightly, as the law has decided to come into the pitch then. But as you said, what a start from Recon. He's not too far behind Siege now, and Neymar's having a battle with Charlie here, and Neymar has got himself up into 5th position.
That is a great start for Neymar, up from 7th on the grid, up into 5th place. And this is, at the moment, perfect for AlphaTauri. Remember, they run 2nd place in the standings behind McLaren coming into this. Cam is still down in 11th place at the moment. Last of the people still that haven't made a pit stop, and he's dropped off the back a little bit. So maybe he came into a little bit of contact early on in the race. So not working out for McLaren so far, working out nicely for AlphaTauri. Charlie, though, at the start of this race seems to be really struggling, as there goes Recon down the inside of Siege, and there's a little bit of contact. It was a late dive a bit from Recon, and Siege was having absolutely none of it, holds on to the place, but you can tell that Recon's much more confident on these medium tyres than Siege in front. But Charlie just seems to be really struggling in that Williams, and he's just falling back as Siege is going to try and go around the outside of turn 14, and around the outside of 15, goes the long way round, gets the move done, and Recon's going to follow him through, and so is Besserud as well. He's coming through in the Ferrari. Recon's trying to move on Siege into turn 1. Can he get 2 for 1 down the back straight? He can't quite do it, loses the rear of the car ever so slightly, and Besserud goes round the outside of Charlie at turn 2 and makes that the inside of turn 3. Charlie has had an awful start to this race.
Yes, I think what actually happened there is Recon has now got down the inside using that second dose of DRS. Besserund actually tapped the back of Recon into turn 1, and it was Charlie trying to retake that position, but the Ferrari just looking to have so more grip at the moment. And yeah, I'm not sure what happened with Charlie. He looked really good in qualifying, apart from one mistake. Up until I think the end of Sector 2, he was pretty much 3rd or 4th on the grid, but he has really dropped back all of a sudden. Those top 2 drivers are absolutely flying away, so I think barring a miracle, Scuba and Perpetuum are going to be the top 2. And last time around, Scuba actually set the fastest lap of the race. It looks like he's got some pretty decent race pace in that Red Bull, and we sort of saw this last time out in the USA. He was ahead in qualifying with Perpetuum starting further back, and he just drove away from everyone else, taking advantage of that. And you've got to say, he's 4.6 seconds ahead of everyone but Perpetuum, as Graham's now having a go on Faxland. That's a straightforward DRS pass. Scuba's got some pretty good race pace once again.
He definitely has. Meanwhile, Recon's up yet another place. He goes around the outside of Neymar up towards turn 1, and already from 13th on the grid onto lap 4, and Recon's in the top 5. He is loving those medium tyres. Seems to be the only one at the moment that's getting some pace out of them, as Besserwood's made the move now on Siege, and he's up another place into 7th. So this is now throwing maybe Ferrari into the ring a little bit in the Manufacturers' Championship as well, with Perpetuum currently running in 3rd place. But like you say, Graham now running in 3rd place ahead of Faxand, who's the first person to pick up a penalty in this race coming out of turn 7. Very easy to do, but both Williams, good qualifying for both Williams, but in the race they just don't seem to have any grip at all.
No, definitely. It's very weird that, because obviously it is equal cars, so in normal life, if Williams unfortunately qualified 3rd and 5th, you probably would expect them to be dropping down the grid pretty quickly at this moment in time. But yeah, it's strange how Faxland got passed by Graham and then so easily got passed as well, and just quickly dropped into the clutches of Recon. And I imagine Recon might be able to go into turn 1 here. Perpetuum slowly closing up to the back of Scuba. Yeah, this is going to be a very straightforward pass, I think, round the outside then for Recon on the Williams. Later on the brakes, he'll have the inside line for turn 2. We gave Faxland exactly 1 car's width there. and no more. He is now up into 4th position, and I think Besserwood has just managed to fend off Neymar.
He has, as Fatsando's coming back down the outside of Recon into turn 4 and sweeps past. Fatsan's got a great car in a straight line. He made that look very easy. Ran a little bit wide on the exit of turn 4 though. Is Recon thinking of a move up the inside of turn 6? He is. He's going to look to the inside line. Fatsan leaves him just enough room, but Recon just with such a shallow line. All really late on the brakes into turn 8. That was a bit of a dive. That was a bit ambitious. Fatsan didn't give him the room, and Recon has to back out of the move. So Recon with a little bit of a dive there at turn 8, maybe overstepping it just a little bit, maybe getting a bit impatient with the Williams. If he gets past this Williams, he's got a great run at a podium place at least in this race. So Recon maybe just needs to sit back a little bit. Besserwood though in that Ferrari looking fast as well. Now up into 6th place as Neymar's dropped to 7th. Siege from 6th place on the grid, looking good on that alternate strategy. Has a lot of ERS in his back pocket, but unlike Recon, just can't seem to get any pace out of those medium tyres.
No, he can't. Faxland into the pits on the soft, so this is very strange indeed. And Siege is coming to the pits early, though we've seen this from Siege multiple times. Faxland's actually retired from the session, which is very strange indeed, but we've seen this a lot from Siege, where he tries to go extremely long on the soft tyres. I'm not sure 13 laps on them is the best strategy. 10 maybe could have worked for him. I'm not sure this is going to be a great idea for Siege. I think he's going to be in trouble at the end of the race.
It may give him the undercut a little bit on the drivers around him, but like we've seen already, there's been so many overtakes in this race already. It's fairly easy to overtake around this track. So if you're struggling with a bit of tyres at the end of the race, you are going to get absolutely swamped. So Siege back out onto the track then in 10th place ahead of the Law, who's still running at the back of the field but still going, so he will score points if he stays in this race. At the front of the field, these two, we haven't seen them really since the first lap of the race. They've disappeared at the front now, 6.3 seconds ahead of Graham. This is how the championship actually looks in terms of the standings, and this is how it is on the road at the moment as Petram maybe thinking of a move now down the inside of Scuba in towards turn 1, is down the inside of the Red Bull when Scuba decides not to fight that one too hard. Petram then up into the lead of the race and has got quite a lot of ERS, a lot more ERS than Scuba, so maybe Petram, thinking he has the better pace, was just biding his time, waiting for the right moment. Scuba's coming back at him though in the Red Bull around the outside of turn 4. This is a risky move, trying to go around the outside of his championship rival. Perpetuum doesn't leave him a lot of space, and Scuba drops into 2nd place. Perpetuum waited for the right time and has made the move. Now maybe we might see Perpetuum stretch his legs a little bit.
Yes, we might do, and these strategies are interesting me at the moment. So I just watched Besserwood actually nearly lose it coming out the pit lane. Him and Neymar and Charlie have put the medium tyres on, whereas Cam and Recon have decided to put the soft tyres on all of a sudden. So it's like they're all just struggling with tyre grip in these early stages of the race, and this is very interesting indeed now to see how this is going to work out. Is this going to be the right idea to have pitted early and put the mediums on, which is what the conventional strategy would tell us it's a normal idea? But then again, we have seen the softs go exceptionally well at various points this season. I mean, Petram and Scuba don't look to be troubling too much at the moment, and Scuba's thinking about going for a move. He's going to have to go the long way round again. Again, Petram, he's just not leaving Graham a lot of room at the moment. To be fair, he's going to use the argument of, I'm on the racing line and he wasn't far enough alongside me. If Scuba keeps going for these outside moves, he's leaving himself at risk of getting a 3-second time penalty.
It definitely is, and if these guys continue to fight, Recon is not out of this race, remember, he's now in a lot of free air with fresh soft compound tyres on. He should have a run at maybe jumping Graham in the pit stops here, if he can get close enough. We've had another spinner, that is the Law, towards the back of the field. As Siege sets the fastest lap of the race. Now that's interesting. Siege has got a lot of speed as Recon picks up a time penalty, and Siege has just gone round the outside of Besserwood at turn 1. So, I'll tell you what, despite pitting only a lap earlier than these guys, he's well over 3 seconds clear of Neymar already, having been behind him when coming into the pits. But Besserwood back down the inside towards turn 4. Siege just doesn't have the straight line speed to hold on to the move. But the soft compound tyres in terms of raw speed look a lot better than the medium tyres, especially considering Cam has now just passed Neymar and is up into 8th place. So soft tyres looking very fast.
Yeah, the soft tyres are looking pretty good at the moment, and Scuba's decided to go for that undercut then at the end of lap 8. He is into the pits, just trying to take advantage and trying obviously to get the lead of this race. Where is he going to come out? I think he will come out in some free air, not too far behind May. Well, about 4 or 5 seconds, I think, behind May. So this could work out pretty well then for Scuba. So you'd expect to see Perpetuum in next lap around, and this could well put the Red Bull driver back into the lead of the race.
It definitely could. Let's see if he can perform that undercut. Meanwhile, back on board with Siege is going for a move on Besserwood once again into turn 1. goes to the outside line of the Ferrari. Can Siege get this move done this time round around the outside? Yes, he can. He gets it done, but Besserud will have the DRS coming down towards turn 4 once again. And again, Besserud gets a great 1 through 3. Such a good run, in fact. He runs clean into the back of the Mercedes coming through the corner, and he's down the inside. And yet again, Besserud showing how crucial it is to get a good run through turn 3, slices back down the inside. And again, Siege not being very aggressive in his defence. It's just allowing Besserud to get back through, and this is only allowing Graham and maybe Mays as well to get back into this battle a little bit later on in this race.
Yes, I'd say at the moment Graham is going to come out ahead of Siege, which makes sense as he was ahead of him anyway. And he will have slower tyres to start with, but you'd expect him to pull that gap. It's about 16 seconds between Mays and Siege at the moment. We're talking roughly 20 seconds for a pit stop as Valor now picks up a penalty. Oh, Besserwood's had a big moment there. Siege lifts off the throttle, can't quite take advantage, which I don't think he'll be too fussed about because he'll get the DRS. Now, will he try something different this time around? Because he's done the same thing for the last 2 laps and Besserwood's been able to get him back into turn 4. We'll have to wait and see here if Siege can. If anything, it looks a bit far away, but the DRS seems to be really powerful at this point in the race. And I wonder if he's just sticking behind, getting that better run, forcing the Ferrari deep ever so slightly to then get the move done into turn 4.
Here he goes then through turn 3. Besserud though looks very strong through turn 3, I will say that. Siege can't get as close as Besserud has done in the past. Siege not using a lot of his ERS either as he comes through towards turn 4. He's going to have the outside line. He leaves Besserud just enough space. They make a little bit of contact and they're now going to run side by side through 5, but Besserud with the inside line gets back in front. So again, Siege being very cautious with this overtake is just allowing Besserud to get that move back done, and Siege a little bit late on the brakes there. Down into turn 8, has to avoid the back of the Ferrari. So Siege again just missing out on the opportunity, and Cam is really closing in on these two now in the McLaren, so he's starting to bring himself into this battle. Graham's into the pit lane. Interestingly enough, Perpetuum has stayed out. We're on to lap 11 of this race now. It's been 3 laps nearly since Scuba has pitted, and Perpetuum is still staying out, so he thinks that going longer on the soft compound tyres for a short run on the mediums at the end is the better strategy.
I'm not quite sure what is the best strategy at the moment. Well, we said the mediums weren't doing very well, apart from Besserund at the moment, because he still looks like he's very comfortable. Siege is going to get back ahead once more, and he has got a bit more VRS than Besserund, so if he wanted to, he could use this to defend. Mace is going to come out behind both of them, and I think behind Cam as well, and this time around it looks like Siege is far enough ahead to hold on to that 5th position all of a sudden. Graham's come out in 4th place, and depending on how well the softs last, we might still see Graham on the podium. Scuba is just over 3 seconds ahead of him, but has already picked up a penalty. Mays now picks up a time penalty, and Perpetuum finally deciding to come into the pits. Make sure you get it slowed down in time for the pit lane speed limiter line. You do not want to be getting a 5-second penalty. He will come out behind Scuba, but he will have fresher tyres and might just be able to get that fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, it all depends on how good these medium tyres are, how strong Perpetuum is on the mediums. The only person we've really seen show any pace apart from Besserud is obviously Recon on those medium tyres. Recon might, by the way, undercut Graham quite handsomely there, about 6 seconds he took out of Graham over these past 4 laps or so on that set of soft tyres. Perpetuum then coming out of the pit lane is now down into 2nd place in the race, but he's not that far behind, so the pace difference between the soft and the mediums was barely anything, because Scuba, while he has jumped back ahead, is only 6/10 ahead, so it's not like Scuba has built a big lead over these past 3 laps, and Perpetuum's tyres will be fresher, and Perpetuum has a lot more ERS, so you've got to say at this point in the race, Perpetuum's just looking the better bet for this race win.
Yes, definitely. Scuba, he's just got to concentrate on his own thing, keep it clean, try and defend if he can, but not too aggressively. And then with Recon having that 3-second time penalty, that could be a big help all of a sudden, because that means Scuba's effectively 9 seconds ahead with 6 and a bit laps to go. That gap is not getting closed that dramatically, especially when the tyre delta comes into play. So that situation of Perpetuum getting the hat-trick, the pole, the win and the fastest lap, and Scuba just finishing behind him is coming into play at this moment in time. So Scuba at the moment looks as though he's going to go into the final race 9 points behind, which might not be too worrying. Well, let's not forget Recon started right at the back of the grid in this race. He could have a much bigger part to play in the next one. Neymar's now picked up a time penalty. He looks to have dropped back in all of these pit stops all of a sudden. He wasn't doing too bad earlier. I think he'd got himself up to 5th or 6th position. He's now all of a sudden down in 9th place. So there we go. Perpetuum has got ahead of Scuba using the DRS. Straightforward for him. He's just got to keep it clean now and just concentrate on building a bit of a gap.
Yeah, and I think Scuba recognised there that he just didn't really have the pace to fight that one, didn't really put up a defence, and is maybe just hoping to stick to the back of him as Recon picks up his second time penalty of the race now. So that's interesting. That puts Graham back into a net third place as it stands. It obviously, like you said earlier on, depends on how well those soft tyres hold on towards the end and how much pace Graham has got, whether he can get onto the podium. But at the moment, Graham's fourth place looking very secure in this race, and he is outscoring Mays by quite a lot, so his third place will be secure as it stands at the moment. Recon kind of taking himself out of contention of maybe being in the top two in this race. You would say now maybe Scuba is just going to try and stick to the back of the Ferrari in front and hope that Perpetuum falls foul of the thing that's costed him all season long, and that's penalties.
Yeah, Scuba is just going to try and stay in DRS range at the moment, as there we go, Perpetuum has set the fastest lap of the race, and you would not expect that to be beaten now. You'd have thought the soft tyres will have worn enough. I've just seen Recon's lap time, a 109.4, 8 tenths off of his best. So the soft runners, with them all pitted early, they're not going to beat it at the moment, unless we see one of them decide to maybe go for the glory of a fastest lap point later on in the race, someone further down the field. And even then, I wouldn't expect any of them to, no disrespect, to have the pace, even with the advantage of the soft tyres, to beat the time Perpetuum has just set. So he's looking pretty clear for a perfect run at this moment. There is some good battling though going further down the field. Neymar and Charlie battling for 9th and 10th place. Charlie had a go of a lap before, couldn't quite do it. He's a bit closer this time around, so we'll see if he can get the move done on the outside.
Here he comes then down towards turn 4. Neymar parks it in the middle of the road, gives him just enough room on the left, on the right hand side of the track, and Charlie's going to go clean around the outside, and they make a little bit more contact, and even more contact. Neymar's into the wall on the inside, Charlie off the road on the outside, and somehow both of them get away with it with, I think, no damage somehow. So they're very lucky to get away with that. But Charlie, I think, just kind of cutting back across the front of Neymar's car in turn 5 while he was still there, which is very easy to do because of the nature of that corner. But they just come into contact. They both get away with it, and that's Charlie then up into 9th place. And like you said, it's a bit of a shame for Neymar. Had such a good start to this race. Was running in 5th place in the early stages, but since that pit stop phase really just kind of has dropped off the pace quite heavily.
Yeah, I had to check for a second there that full damage is actually turned on, because I don't quite understand how they both got away with that. I thought we were going to see a Neymar has retired from the race and Charlie coming into the pits with a broken wing, but thankfully they are both able to continue, able to carry on, and Charlie, just checking the penalties ever so slightly, he's 6 seconds behind Mays, so unless Mays gets another penalty, he's not really going to be under any pressure from Charlie, who, it's weird how he just struggled so much in qualifying, and it just didn't work for him in the race. And the same with Faxland, who obviously retired for... Still not quite sure actually why Faxland did retire in the end.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure myself either. We haven't had any confirmation of it as the law picks up another penalty. The only thing that I can think of for the Williams drivers is that obviously we had a lobby restart, so maybe they forgot to put their setup on, which we have seen already this season. We've seen Recon, I believe, do that earlier on in the season. So it is possible that could have happened, and that is, for me at least, the only kind of explanation I can think of as to why they dropped so far off the pace. Because you would say, in any normal race, Faxland probably could have had maybe 3rd place secured in this race. He had good pace over Graham in qualifying, and you would imagine that with Recon's penalties that Faxland would have been able to capitalise on that.
Yeah, maybe, but obviously we don't know. Like you said, setups could well have played a part in it. They're both qualified on the soft tyres, so it's not a tyre issue that they were starting on a different tyre and couldn't struggle, which we might have seen for some of these drivers, like maybe Neymar on the mediums. That could perhaps be why he's struggling at the moment. I think you're probably right with the setup situation at the moment. Interestingly, at the lead of the race, Scuba, he has managed to stay with DRS range of Perpetuum. I wonder if he's just going to concentrate on getting close enough next time around and trying to go for this on the final lap of the race, because it's pretty much, you'd expect it to be whoever's leading going into turn 4, well, coming out of turn 4 and 5 on this final lap of the race next time around, they're probably going to be the favourites to take the victory here, and that could have a huge change in who wins this championship.
It definitely could, yeah, and I think that is exactly what is happening. And I think we've seen already today that the DRS around this track is a lot more powerful than I think a lot of people maybe were expecting. It has been very strong, especially down towards turn 4. It seemed kind of overwhelmingly strong how powerful the DRS is, and Scuba has been saving up his ERS over the past few laps. He's now back up to about 65%, which is more than what Perpetuum has now. So Scuba has just kind of been sitting there biding his time, saving his ERS, maybe going for that move or just trying to capitalise on someone getting a penalty, as I think that's Neymar that's had a spin out of Zheng Xiao coming out of the corner out of turn 12, and he's well onto the infield grass. He's just getting the car facing it the right way, and I think he's actually going to lose a place to the Law here. So the Law is going to go down the inside, and the Law now no longer running sitting in 11th place is up into 10th place. Neymar's race has gone from good to bad to horribly ugly, and he now runs at the back of the field. Unfortunately, he's really struggled on these medium tyres. At the front of the field though, Scuba now, is he going to start launching an attack? He's using a lot more ERS now, coming down towards turn 1. He's trying to get maybe a little bit closer, but I think Perpetuum's recognised that as well. He's starting to use a bit more of his ERS, so is Scuba going to be close enough coming through turn 3 and down towards turn 4? It all depends on the run. Perpetuum nicely on the brakes into turn 1, flat through turn 2, as is Scuba though. Scuba on his ERS early through 3, but I don't think Scuba's going to be close enough here as they come down towards turn 4, and Scuba's recognised it pretty early on, and he's not going to go for the move, so maybe that plan of Scuba trying to steal the win off Perpetuum's not really come to fruition for him.
Yes, it looked as though Perpetuum, it's not like Scuba had a bad run through turn 1, but Perpetuum just had a bit more confidence, was able to take a bit more curve, carried a bit more speed through the apex of turn 1, and from then Scuba was always fighting a slightly losing battle. He is going to end up finishing though in second position, and Perpetuum taking the win, so he won't be too worried at this moment in time. It does just make it a bit more nervous, of course, going into that final race in Abu Dhabi.
It definitely does, yeah. It all depends now on what the qualifying order and all that is for the next round of this evening. Yeah, as you say, Perpetuum though has done all he needs to do to try and win this championship. We've got one round to go, and Perpetuum is going to get a clean sweep in the first round of the evening. Pole position, race winner and fastest lap. Perpetuum is your race winner, and he gets the fastest lap on the final lap of the race with a 1 minute 8.1. What a stellar final lap from Perpetuum. He wins the race here at Brazil ahead of Scuba, who gets second place, doing all he can do to try and hold on. Recon crosses the line in third from 13th on the grid, and Graham wasn't close enough to capitalise on his penalties. Siege will be fifth. He made those soft tyres last to the end, and he dropped Besserid in the end, who has to settle for 6th place in this race. I think he's safe though to Cam on penalties, who will cross the line and stay in 7th. Mays will cross the line next in 8th ahead of Charlie, The Law and Neymar, who will be our finishers today. The Law looks like maybe he's got his ERS stuck open, so that might be why he's been struggling so much in this race, because he is on his overtake coming down towards Zhengzhou, which is a very odd place to use it, which is might be stuck towards the back of the field. But another note to take from that race, Cam in 7th place, Graham 4th, might have just saved McLaren the manufacturers.
It might have done as well, yes. It's going to be very close, isn't it, at this moment in time? Ferrari having a good run, though, obviously, and I'm going to try and do some very quick maths at this moment in time. I think Ferrari are probably just a bit too far back, with McLaren obviously still scoring points and not quite getting that 1-2. Alfa Romeo, they've got Recon in, he's a reserve driver, so they're obviously out of it. This is going to be very close indeed, I think, going into the final race. If Cam retires and Graham and Neymar both manage to get decent finishes, it's definitely still a possibility. What we do know is, though, in the Drivers' Championship, it is now a 9-point gap at the top between Perpetuum and Scuba.
Yeah, 9-point gap then in the championship, like you say, and if we get the same result we just did then it will be Scuba then that takes the championship by a single point over Perpetuum if we get a repeat. But obviously, Recon 3rd place in that race, having started 13th on the grid, having not taken part in qualifying. He is going to play a massive part in the Abu Dhabi race, so look out for that. Here's your finishing order then for the first round of the evening. Perpetuum wins from pole position, a 1 minute 8.1, quite a way faster than everyone else on the grid. The only person that got really close to him in terms of lap time was Siege on his fresh set of soft tyres on an 8.2. Scuba in 2nd place ahead of Recon 3rd. Graham, ever the consistent driver, he has secured 3rd place in the championship now. So Graham has finished in the bronze position in the TTML Sprint League. Great stuff from him. 4th place in this race. Again, another solid race from him. Siege in 5th, kind of held up with that battle with Besserid. Couldn't really get any higher than that. Besserid 6th ahead of Cam in 7th, who struggled on the alternate strategy. Mays 8th ahead of Charlie, who dropped from a good qualifying. The Law, who had a spin very early on, recovered to 10th place. And Neymar, after a good opening stint, really struggled on the mediums. Fatsand retired fairly early on in this race, and Silas never left the grid, so he didn't finish this race either. So a little bit of an up and down race for a lot of drivers. The top two, though, you've got to say, really in a class of their own in that race.
Yes, really in a class of their own. I'm interested to see what would have happened with with Recon if he was further up the grid, because on track he finished about 6 seconds behind. Did have those 6 second of penalties. You've got to wonder if those 6 seconds behind, though, would that have been accounted for by him trying to get his way through the traffic in the early stages of the race? Abu Dhabi could be a very interesting circuit indeed. We'll maybe see how Faxand and Charlie do if it was a setup issue that caused them their problems. This is going to be really interesting once again. Obviously, one-shot qualifying and an extra 2 points on the board. And I think Scuba will be hoping he could just pull it out of the bag and manage to get a pole position here, because that will just make it that little bit tougher for Perpetuum.
Yeah, absolutely. He needs that. If he isn't going to get that, then I think Scuba's going to have to try and get fastest lap at some point in this race, or have to beat Recon, because that is going to be one of the biggest things in this race. Abu Dhabi then, a very, very different track to Brazil. This is probably one of the evenings this season where the gap in actual tracks is quite big. The last time I can remember a track layout difference that was this big was Budapest and Spa. Obviously, they're two very different tracks. This time around, these two tracks are very different. So what kind of mindset do you think the drivers are going to have going into Abu Dhabi compared to Brazil?
It's strange, isn't it? Because it all depends on how much practice you've put in beforehand. You used to obviously doing one circuit a week, and now you've got to do two all of a sudden. It wouldn't surprise me if the drivers are more prepared for Brazil than Abu Dhabi, just from a mindset of they might enjoy driving around Brazil more than Abu Dhabi. So maybe we'll see a few more penalties here. Again, overtaking can be a bit tough. The way the DRS zones work out at this circuit, and the way the layout is with the tight hairpin before one and the chicane before the second one, I'd say personally the second DRS zone is probably where you're going to see the majority of the overtaking, and just the one on the first DRS zone is maybe just the drivers choosing to set it up, knowing that if they do get the overtake done there's always a chance for the driver to get them back in the second one, whereas if you do it in the second one, chances are you've got a chance to pull away, because the final sector, again, dirty air is going to be critical in that final sector, similar to what it was in the second sector at Brazil. We know Perpetuum's going to be really quick. We know Scuba is as well. Recon's a bit of an unknown. Sometimes we've seen him make mistakes in qualifying, so I'd get ready for some very exciting final half hour of the season.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be something to behold. And another thing to note about this track as well is tyre wear. This track does have relatively high tyre wear on this track, so the kind of strategies where we saw people from the mediums pitting earlier than people off of the softs, you're very unlikely to see that here unless something has gone horribly wrong in your strategy. You're going to have to wait and see in this one, and don't be surprised if you see people qualifying on the medium tyres, because despite the fact that tyre wear is quite high and you would expect the softs to be fast, the actual tyre delta between the soft and the medium tyres in qualifying here is relatively small. It's just under a second, despite there being 21 corners on this track. The difference is quite small, so you may see the likes of Perpetuum, maybe Recon, try and qualify on the medium tyres, and that could give them a real strategy advantage around this track. So we'll wait and see who we go on board with qualifying, but qualifying predictions for you, Luke. Who do you expect to be on pole position?
I think I'm going to go for Perpetuum again. The only reason I don't think he's going to go for that alternate strategy is the 2 points for pole position, because if he commits to the mediums, he's basically giving them up, and I don't think he can afford to take the risk of giving them to Scuba at this moment in time. So I think he's going to get pole position. I think it will be Scuba in second again, and I am going to go for Recon to get third place this time around. Yeah,
I think I'm going to agree with you on that one as well. I think, like you say, if Perpetuum goes for the medium tyres, he's basically betting on Recon beating Scuba in this race in some form. So we'll have to wait and see how it's going to pan out. Pesa were just the last person to set up their tyres, and we're going to ride on board with Faxland in the other Williams for the final qualifying session of the season. So let's see what he can do around this 21-turned Yas Marina circuit. As they come around the corner, Siege is the only one on the medium tyres, by the way, going for the same strategy once again as we head through first sector. Very short first sector, one braking zone, and then it's flat through turn 2 and 3, down towards the braking zone for turn 4. This track probably might get remodeled in the new future, so this chicane isn't part of this track in the future. But then down into this hairpin, Cam has retired from the qualifying session along with Charlie, so they both invalidated at some point, and Fatsand with a big wobble there coming out of the hairpin. Down the first of the two DRS straights, these drivers move to the middle of the road, ready for the braking zone at the end of the chicane because the track narrows up. Down towards the end, brake it just before 100 metres, get to this corner, don't take too much sausage curb. Fatsand a little bit wide in the first part, compromises his run through the second part of the chicane and doesn't get the best one out of the corner, keep it all the way to the left hand side down this second DRS straight to the end of the second sector, and now the final sector. This is where pretty much all of the corners are in this track. Through the triple chicane then, it rises over a little crest at the top, very easy to lose the rear of the car. Fatsan keeping it nice and neat as he heads through the next of the many 90-degree corners. Two kinks then, and then there's a slight kink in the braking zone for turn 17, through 16 and then into 17, braking hard, down into third gear for Fatsan. Now underneath that famous hotel, looks absolutely stunning in the moonlight here. Now through up towards the penultimate corner. Very easy to invalidate on the exit of this corner. Fatsan misses the apex ever so slightly. Doesn't take a lot of road on the exit of the corner. And now round to the final corner of the lap, and it looks like Perpetuum is going to get those points for pole position. Scuba second place as you predicted, but it's Faxland third place on the grid, and Recon in the end not at the front. I don't know if Recon invalidated or made a mistake on that lap, but it's Faxland that ends up getting third, and that might have just saved Scuba this championship.
Maybe indeed, and Scuba I think was actually slightly closer in qualifying this time than he was in Brazil, which is slightly impressive to say it is a longer track. 1 minute 33 for pole position. I think Recon did invalidate quite early on. I think Mays invalidated towards the end of that lap as well. So that does mean Recon will get a free choice of tyres, starting this time in 10th as opposed to, I believe it was 13th last time around. Siege, the only one in the top 10 on the mediums. We'll see if it works out for him again this time around. I think he could probably do with just pitting a bit later onto that set of the soft tyres, which I imagine is more conventional to do around this circuit. Perpetuum is doing everything he has to at the moment, but Scuba is doing just enough to hang in there. We'll see if he can get a really good start again, because turn 1, you don't see many overtakes into turn 1 here, just because of how short the run is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really short run, so if you get a strong start, getting into the lead at turn 1 is a big thing to pull off around this track because of the short run and the short braking zone. You're more likely to see people go for moves down towards turn 4 or maybe turn 6 at the hairpin. So look out for that one. It really Constantinas up into that chicane, especially as it drops downhill and narrows ever so slightly on the apex of turn 4. So that could be maybe the key point to the start of this race. And one thing to note from that qualifying as well, AlphaTauri with a good qualifying, doing what exactly you said they needed to do really. And they've qualified, I believe, 4th and 7th for this race, with Neymar in 4th, Graham in 7th place, and Cam at the back of the grid having not set a valid time. Now AlphaTauri really need to make the most of this opportunity.
Yes, I do, definitely. Another point that I think is going to be interesting about this race is we're going to have a more well, hopefully, touch wood, we're going to have more conventional start to the race where people have they're not going to have fresh tyres, obviously, if you're in the top 10 all of a sudden. Whether that's going to put Perpetuum and Scuba at a bit more of a disadvantage to some of the others. To Siege started on an older set of mediums, and those outside the top 10, we'll have to wait and see. I'm just checking the tyres all of a sudden. Cam has gone for the softs. Recon and Charlie have gone for the medium tyres. If Recon gets a good start like he did last time around, he could have a bit more of an advantage this time over those at the start of the race. We'll see if the race pace of the two Williams is better than it was in Brazil as well.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Is Fatsan going to drop through the field much like Charlie did? Like you say, going to have to wait and see in this race. The one problem here for Recon is if he's going to get these moves done, it's fairly difficult to do it in the first sector. He's going to have to do a lot of those moves in the second sector of the lap, and he does not want to get held up behind a lot of traffic in the final sector, because obviously you could get held up in the middle sector in Brazil, but the disadvantage of being held up in the final sector here is massive, considering there's barely anywhere that you can make an overtake unless the driver in front makes some sort of mistake.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the final sector here is very awkward. You're not going to see, unless a driver makes a mistake in front of you, you might see an overtake into the chicane at turns 5 and 6, but again, if you go for an overtake there, you're just giving the driver behind you DRS down the next long straight. So you have got to be a bit tactical this time around. The long straights, long acceleration zones, the final sector, you can see drivers pick up a few penalties as well, especially through the final two corners. I'd say they're prime spots on this circuit for drivers who pick up penalties. A lot of the top names kept it clean last time around. Perpetuum, Scuba and Graham did a very good job on the penalties. That could have more of an importance around this circuit.
It definitely could, and that's what held back Recon last time out in Brazil, so who knows, maybe he could take himself out of the equation by maybe picking up 1-2 penalties in this race. Before we get on the grid and I hand over to you, Luke, for the start of the final race of the season, who do you think is going to be champion after this race?
Well, I'm going to go brave. I am going to go for Perpetuum.
I'm going to go the opposite then. I'm going to go Scuba. So we'll wait and see. I mean, at least one of us will be correct. So we'll wait and see. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to you then for the start of the 22nd and final race of the season.
Just waiting for the final few cars to get onto the grid. Perpetuum, second in the championship, on pole position. Scuba managed to jump him on the start lane at Brazil, and I'm sure that is his objective once again here in Abu Dhabi, as we now do wait for the lights to come on for the final time this season. We've got 5 lights. And the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix is underway. What are the starts like? It seems like Perpetuum's had a pretty good start this time around. Faxland with a bit of a nightmare, and that is Besserwood trying to go all the way the outside, who's now in a racing point for some reason. Neymar trying to get alongside and managed to work his way through as well. But the top two again working their way through the order. Recon with another good start. Siege dropping places and battling with Graham in the background all of a sudden. Will they make it through the chicane cleanly? No, Siege has been tapped ever so slightly. He's spun around. Don't think he's picked up, though, any damage, and everyone is able to carry on. Perpetuum with a fantastic start into the lead of this race. Scuba in second. Faxan recovering ever so slightly. Neymar in fourth position, and you'll see the slipstreaming starting down this long back straight all of a sudden here. No DRS, obviously, until lap 3, as we see Besserwood think about a move on Neymar. Neymar's just about able to cover that off. All of a sudden, Recon's managed to get himself up into 7th place after a spin for Siege earlier. He's on the medium tyres, and he's on a fresh set of the mediums as well. Cam on that fresh set of softs having a good start to the race. There's 2 Mercedes at the back of the field, which is not something you see too often. They swap places with Siege now working his way ahead of Mays, coming through the Sector 2 moment. It is still Perpetuum, Scuba, Faxland, Neymar, Besserwood, Graham just dropping back ever so slightly off the back of Besserwood, and you've got Recon all over the back of him here. Is he going to think about a dive down the inside into the next corner? Perhaps just a bit too early on in the race and not enough of a tyre advantage to be going through them as they pass their way under the hotel. A fairly clean first lap then. Only Siege with that little bit of tap on the back of, I think it might have been when he was trying to overtake Recon or Graham into the chicane. But Perpetuum doing what he has to at the moment, leading this race. Scuba and Faxland not too far behind, though.
Yeah, just one thing I noticed actually there, that obviously Perpetuum and Scuba had such a good start compared to the second row. Both drivers on the second row, Faxan and Neymar, just really struggled to get off the line. But as we see with Abu Dhabi, it's such a short run into turn 1 that the likes of Besserud and Graham and Siege just couldn't make the best of it. One thing to note here, much unlike Brazil, Perpetuum and Scuba are not pulling away from the rest of the field. They actually got closed in on by the drivers behind, and Scuba here maybe having a look at Perpetuum coming down towards that back chicane. Perpetuum using a bit of his ERS though to try and pull the gap ever so slightly. Scuba is going to have a look though down into the chicane. He's going to go to the outside line. Perpetuum defends the inside. Scuba around the outside. Is he going to go for the move? No, he's not. And Faxan too late on the brakes there, misjudges that and runs clean into the back of the Red Bull and spins himself out. So Faxan again with a disastrous start to the race, drops to the back and retires on track. Unfortunately, it's just given up, and that's such a sad way to end the season for him, as Perpetuum defends the inside line into the triple chicane once again, and Scuba can't get the move done. That puts Neymar now up into 3rd place for the first time this season ahead of Besserud, and again Recon's already up to 5th place, having made that move on Graham. So Recon now in a really good position in this race.
He is indeed, and there's almost a Hamilton-Rosberg 2016 quality to this race. Perpetuum knows that if him and Scuba just escape away from the rest of the field, and Scuba ends up finishing second and Perpetuum wins, it's not going to be enough for the title. So Perpetuum can't drag Scuba along with him and almost has to hope that some of the other drivers, you've got to say with the races at the moment, most likely Recon is able to catch up and put Scuba under a bit of pressure. Cam is coming into the pits. I wonder if he's picked up some damage. He's actually retired from the session. Well, oh, well, oh, well. That is going to be very interesting for the Constructors' Championship with Neymar in 3rd and Graham in 6th. They might just have an opportunity here to take the victory.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for them, and obviously Graham Evans consistent, and Neymar at the moment so far in the best position he's been in all season. Neymar is yet to pick up a podium this season. This would be a great way to end off his campaign if he can do that and secure AlphaTauri the manufacturer's crown, but he has just dropped out. No, he's got DRS. He is outside of a second, but he's got DRS off the back of Scuba to help him defend. Scuba now maybe thinking of a run towards Perpetuum, goes to the outside line again, and I think he's just trying to set himself up for that second straight, because we've already talked about how easy it is to get re-overtaken down the straight, and Scuba with a great run out of the chicane on his DRS. Perpetuum's going to have to defend to the inside, but look how powerful the DRS is down that back straight, and Scuba is going to breeze past. So unlike in real life, Scuba has the straight line speed to pull off what Rosberg couldn't pull off in 2016 and has got ahead of Perpetuum. So maybe if Perpetuum was trying that strategy, so far it hasn't worked.
Yes, so far it hasn't worked indeed, unfortunately for him at this moment in time. I've just checked the championship situation. As it stands, as it stood going into this race, I should say, AlphaTauri were only 13 points behind McLaren. So even if we say Neymar retired from this race and Graham ended up finishing in 6th, that would be enough to take it by 1 point. With both of their cars, as long as they both get to the end, they will be the Constructors' champions. They will take it on the final race. Scuba now setting the fastest lap of the race, and they are starting to pull away ever so slightly from this 3rd place battle with Neymar, Besserud and Recon, whose progress has just been halted ever so slightly.
Yeah, just a little bit slightly now, stuck behind Besserud in that racing point at the moment. But I think Recon's recognised maybe the caution is the better part of Ali here, because on those medium tyres, he will be able to go a lot further than those on the softs, and the pace will come to him. And he's still not far off the top 2 at this point in the race, and should have a massive pace advantage at the end. So I think maybe just sitting and waiting, or as I say that, he's actually got a great run coming out of the hairpin, so he might go for a run here on Besserud, but Besserud's also going for a run on Neymar, and I think Recon's going to try and get the pair of them as they go 3 wide down towards the chicane. Besserud on the outside, Recon on the inside of the corner. Besserud trying to squeeze the Alfa Romeo to the inside, and the racing point still down the inside, but gets caught on the curb, loses the rear of the car, and Neymar's caught up in the aftermath of that, just unable to avoid the racing point. That drops both of them down towards the back of the field, and Neymar's opportunity at possibly getting a podium has fallen by the wayside. Besserud's dropped to the back as well, and he's going to get overtaken by the Law, I think, coming down into the triple chicane. He is, as he's let through, is the Law. So the Law's up into 7th, but Recon up into 3rd. Aggressive overtake in the end, aggressive defence of the place, but it's now put him in 3rd place.
It has indeed, and he's definitely going to have a say, I think, in this. He's going to be right up there with those front 2 at the end of this race. It would not surprise me if even in the next couple of laps he starts closing in, and we might just see a few early pit stops from either Scuba or Petcham, because you do usually see a bit more tyre wear around this circuit, so maybe an early pit stop. Such a shame, though, for Neymar getting himself caught up in that. He'd sort of done the right thing of trying to get himself out of the way of the battle between Recon and Besserud, and just an innocent bystander in all of that. He will obviously be able to carry on until the end of the race, and I think that could be important, because Mercedes have also... They've still got a chance of winning this Constructors as well. They need, I think, a bit of misfortune for Graham. I'm just going to try and work it out, what the gap is at the moment between AlphaTauri and Mercedes, because we might see Siege and Mays get themselves further up the order.
You'll have to wait and see. So if Graham can hold on to it, he might be able to secure it. But like you say, Mercedes have got a chance as well. As Perpetuum's going to have another go here. He's re-overtaking Scuba down the first of the DRS straights. He's back into the lead of the race. Scuba, maybe you would think, though, is going to try and set up a move down the second part. But actually, I don't think it's going to be close enough down here. He isn't going to be close enough to the back of the Ferrari. So Scuba drops down into 2nd place. And much like we saw in Brazil, Perpetuum seems to be able to maybe hold his tyres a little bit better. He waits. He doesn't have the pace maybe at the start of the stint, but the second half of the stint, Perpetuum seems to come alive a little bit, and it may be the same thing happening again here as Scuba, maybe comfortably in the lead of the race, now has dropped back, and Perpetuum all of a sudden is starting to stretch his legs once again.
He is indeed, and we'll see what the pace is as well with Recon. That gap sort of stayed at 2 seconds. The Law has managed to defend off Mays at the moment, and Siege and Mays with the Mercedes, I believe they're only 7 points behind AlphaTauri as well, so they're definitely still in this Constructors' Championship battle at the moment. But as things stand right now, Scuba would take the Drivers' Championship, and he is coming into the pits quite early on compared to what we've usually seen, and AlphaTauri would take that Constructors. So this is going to get very spicy now. Scuba into the pits, and you've got to be careful on the pit exit. These final 2 races, probably 2 of the most difficult pit exits on the Formula 1 game.
Yeah, they definitely are. So we're going right on board with Scuba as he goes down through the tunnel. Mays has also decided to come into the pit lane. I think he's trying to undercut the Law and get up a place in this race, trying to help them in that battle with AlphaTauri in the standings. But like you say, at the moment, AlphaTauri with Graham at the front are doing just enough. Neymar's picked up a time penalty, but he's running down in 10th place as it stands. Last of the drivers in the field, but he will still be scoring points there. Scuba out back onto the track with 6 seconds in front of him to the Law. Law, you would imagine, will be pitting in the next couple of laps in this race. So Scuba won't get held up. He's got to really perform, though, on this lap. But you would say around Abu Dhabi, the undercut is much more powerful than it is at Brazil.
Yes, it will be indeed. And Recon is starting to close up to the back of Perpetuum. So I think Perpetuum, he will be aware of that and will head into the pits, I imagine, this time around, to put on that set of medium tyres and just try and cover off that undercut ever so slightly from Scuba, who it might be worth maybe just saving a bit of ARS for Scuba as well, to see if he can defend ever so slightly in the next few stages. Further down the back of the field, Graham's still going around in 3rd position at the moment. He's not doing too well on the soft tyres. He's just not seen him as high up as we would have expected to see him in some of the other races, and Charlie and Siege are starting to close up to him at this moment in time. And I think it just shows how much the drivers are not expecting the soft tyres to last, that Siege hasn't done his trademark coming very early off the mediums.
Yeah, you would imagine you're probably going to see Siege in maybe like 8 or 9 in this race, and I think we've kind of hit that point as actually Recon's in. Wow, that's very early for Recon off of the medium tyres. He's come into the pit lane. That is, just about to say that we're going to see Siege coming a little bit later. Siege is in, and so is Recon. This is very, very odd for me because Perpetuum has stayed out, and we just saw that Recon was starting to close in on Perpetuum, and you would say on raw speed alone, Perpetuum's maybe a little bit faster than Recon, so I don't know why Perpetuum stayed out and why Recon's come in so early, because I don't see these soft tyres holding a lot of pace towards the end of this race.
No, to be fair, he didn't lose a lot on that lap to Scuba. He only lost about, I think, half a second, and he's going to more than gain that at this moment in time. So this could be a title-defining battle here. Scuba versus Recon. Scuba was very quick in the final sector of that last lap. I did just see it flash up purple ever so slightly, whereas Perpetuum, to be fair, did a personal best final sector the lap before, but Scuba was 2/10 faster, and you would imagine the final sector is where the tyre grip has the most advantage. So maybe Perpetuum has just saved these soft tyres ever so slightly to keep them fresh towards the end of the race. We've got one hell of a battle, I think, coming on here. The undercut did seem to work for Maze. He did manage to get himself ahead of the Law, who's also dropped behind Neymar as well. So I wonder if the Law had a bit of damage in that pit stop that he needed to fix. And as things stand in the constructors at the moment, after the pit stops for both AlphaTauris and both Mercedes, is AlphaTauri still with the upper hand?
Yeah, at the moment, as it stands, is Perpetuum then into the pit lane at the midway point of the race. End of lap 7, he's in for a set of medium tyres. So where does Perpetuum come out relative to Scuba and Recon? You would imagine that Scuba is probably going to retake the lead of this race. It all depends on how close Perpetuum is to Recon when they come out. Perpetuum is going to want to be ahead of Recon in this race, because otherwise if he gets stuck behind that Alfa Romeo, that could be Recon maybe winning this race and Perpetuum losing that, as Scuba sets the fastest lap of the race. Now that's telling the medium tyres working well for him, but Recon was very fast in that final sector on that lap. He closed in quite a lot on the Red Bull. As out of the pit lane comes Perpetuum, he's behind Scuba, but crucially ahead of Recon. So Perpetuum stays ahead of the Alfa Romeo, only just, but stays ahead, and now Perpetuum, he's going to want to get this moved on Scuba very quickly.
He is indeed. He's going to want to go for it this time around, and then obviously hope he can pull away a 1 second gap, because that getting Scuba outside of DRS is now going to be crucial to try and allow Recon to have a go at the Red Bull driver as well. So here comes Perpetuum with 6 and a bit laps to go. Straightforward pass on Scuba here, who will of course have the DRS on the next straight. It is only Charlie who is yet to pit at the moment, enjoying those medium tyres. He's 8 seconds ahead of these guys, so he's not going to be a problem for them to catch up. And Scuba didn't get the best exit out of that chicane there, so he will have the DRS to try and help him stay in contact with Perpetuum. He is closing in as well, just not quite close enough to go for a move round the outside. They've kept it clean penalty-wise as well, all these three pacey drivers at this moment in time. It's now, can Scuba stay in range of Perpetuum, and could Recon maybe just use that extra grip that he'll have in the next few laps to get himself ahead of the Red Bull driver and really make this championship very tasty going into the final few laps?
Yeah, that's all it rides on now. Scuba really hanging in the balance here. If he stays where he is, he wins the championship. If he drops a single place, he loses the championship. So this is right on a knife edge at the moment for Scuba. I think the Law, meanwhile, has gone off, and he has retired from the race, unfortunately. And actually, Besserad's gone off at exactly the same time as well in the other racing point. They're both out of this race, unfortunately, so I have no idea what has happened there. And Charlie is now into the pit lane, then onto a set of soft tyres. He will come out behind Graham and Siege, I believe, or he might be right in the thick of the battle. I think he's going to be just behind them, but on a fresh set of soft tyres. So Charlie's still got a good shot at maybe a 4th place in this race from the back of the field, so that would be a good recovery from him. And one Mercedes is battling one AlphaTauri, and the other Mercedes is battling the other AlphaTauri. Neymar's closing in on Maze, and Siege is closing in on Graham. So as it stands, if they both make the overtake stick, it's not really going to make any difference to the championship at the moment.
No, it won't. Siege, you'd imagine, has got a better chance of making the overtake stick on Graham, and Neymar, obviously, with the penalties at the moment, is going to be pretty tough for him. Back at the lead of the race, so Perpetuum and Scuba both clonking over that curve ever so slightly, just about getting away with it. And I do get the funny feeling that the DRS is proving slightly frustrating for Recon at this moment in time. Is he going to think about a move right on the outside? He's tapped the back of Scuba, sent Scuba basically off the track. He's going to have to be very careful to not pick up a penalty there. But Recon, with that front wing damage, that is going to be really costly for him. Siege has got ahead of Graham as well. We'll just have to see how this goes now here. Recon letting Scuba by. That could be it for the championship, because Siege is quite a long way back behind these guys, just completely caught out by the grip on those soft tyres, just went straight into the back of Scuba, and again, another front wing now gone for Recon. Well, at least he's lost both end plates, so at least he's got a bit of extra balance on his car, but that's a shame for him because he was looking really pacey. All of a sudden they're speeding in the pit lane as well. It is all falling apart. He's retired from the race. I think all Scuba knows now, all he has to do is just keep it between the white lines for the final 5 laps, and he's taking this inaugural Sprint League Championship.
Yeah, as it stands, that is the championship at the moment. Like you say, it all depends on Scuba finishing this race where he is. He doesn't need to win this race, and he doesn't want to fall back either. I think Recon, like you say, caught out by the grip, and as well, he was on his ERS using pretty much all of it. Double toe, double DRS, double slipstream. Was just so fast coming into that braking zone, and Scuba moved to that racing line to try and maybe have a look at the outside of Perpetuum, and at the same time he did that, he was ready to hit the brakes, and Recon just missed his braking point because he was going maybe so much faster than he initially thought, and that's what caused that contact. Unfortunately, I don't think you probably would place the blame solely on Recon for that incident. He is the driver behind, so Scuba gets away with it, and now Scuba is in the perfect place to win this championship. So barring anything crazy happening in this race, Scuba is going to walk away from this championship with the win. As it stands though, I wonder how that retirement for Recon is going to affect the manufacturers now, because Maze and Siege are now both ahead of the other Alpha Tauris, and the difference between them points between 4th and 5th and 3rd and 4th is actually greater. So this could maybe put Mercedes in their prime seat to win this.
It could indeed. I think as it stands, it is still going to be enough for Alpha Tauri. They're currently scoring 3 points less than Mercedes, so Siege would actually need, I think, some of those up ahead of him to get a penalty, or he gets an exceptional amount of grip all of a sudden on that car. So again, Graham and Maze have just got to, well, Graham and Neymar have just got to try and keep it clean. Neymar's gone onto the soft tyres. If he gets that fastest lap, it will of course make it that extra bit harder all of a sudden. But as it stands, Alpha Tauri will be, I believe, 3 points ahead of Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship. It's barring an absolute disaster, and I think all 4 of them cars retiring. McLaren are out of it, unfortunately, after Cam's retirement. He fought bravely. He's just been having a lot of connection issues, and that's really what's cost him. With regards to Scuba, I think he's very fortunate that he did the right thing, let's be honest, to slow down and not pick up that penalty. But I think he's very fortunate that Recon went straight into the back of him. If he'd have hit him at an angle and spun him round, then recovering would have brought Siege and Graham and Charlie right back into this. Although Charlie is catching up into the back of Graham, and that could just make things that bit more interesting.
It definitely could. Yeah, I was just about to point out that the Williams is starting to close in ever so slightly on the back of Graham again. Scuba on the back of Perpetuum here, and now Scuba's re-caught Perpetuum and is now stuck right with him. So at least on the medium tyres, it seems Scuba's a little bit more confident on the mediums than maybe Perpetuum is around here. So who knows? Even without that contact with Recon, maybe Scuba had the pace here to try and win this over Perpetuum. Perpetuum, you would expect at this point in the race to try and pull away from Scuba, but that's not happening. Scuba's sticking with him fairly easily. So he's looking confident on these medium tyres. Like I said, he doesn't need to win this race to win this championship, but being Scuba, he'll probably want to win this championship by winning the final race of the season, and he's got a very good shot of doing that. Siege then in 3rd place, 10 seconds back. Graham sticking with him, and I'm wondering now whether we're reaching that point in the race for these drivers on the softs where the difference in pace between the softs and the mediums is just starting to balance out ever so slightly, because Siege caught and passed Graham very quickly and now hasn't pulled away.
Yeah, indeed. The DRS we've seen, it's proved quite powerful at both tracks tonight, hasn't it? We weren't expecting it to be as much of a factor as it was in Brazil, but we're seeing many overtakes long before turn 1, and again here we see how powerful it can be. But I'm not quite sure, just because of how the first stint went. Obviously, Perpetuum did a very good job on the soft tyres. I'm not sure if that's just because he's Perpetuum. He's, of course, reigning Division 1 champion in the regular TTML leagues. He's probably the class of the field, and you'd expect him to be the fastest driver anyway. It's just missing a few rounds, and a few silly penalties for him have cost him, as Neymar now sets the fastest lap of the race, and Graham gets ahead of Siege. So that is going to be a fantastic 5 seconds for Alpha Tauri's Constructors' Championship chances, and Charlie's still involved in this battle as well. And on those fresher soft tyres, you never know whether he'll finish his season off with a podium.
He could do, as Siege is coming back at Graham here, down towards the triple chicane, goes around the outside, and again, the power of that DRS, especially down the second of the 2 straights, is very strong, and Graham could do absolutely nothing in defence, so Siege is back up into third place in this race. Graham drops back down to fourth, but like you say, that was a great 5 seconds for AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri seemingly have good pace in Graham on those medium tyres, and Neymar with the fastest lap. You would imagine it's going to be very difficult for anyone to beat that. One thing I have noticed here is Perpetuum is really slowing the pace at the front, because Siege on that lap, on this lap at least, has been nearly a second and a half faster than both of the drivers at the front. So Perpetuum, I think, really trying the Lewis Hamilton tactic of slowing Scuba down, and Scuba's just sitting there waiting for the end of this race. I don't think anything's going to come of it, because dropping 4 seconds in a lap to allow Siege to jump, to allow Siege to get ahead, Scuba could just make that move fairly easily and not have to worry about it. So I think Perpetuum's trying every trick in the book, and at the moment it's just not going to work his way.
Yes, I was going to say the same. It worked. It nearly worked for Lewis Hamilton because of how difficult it was to pass. We've already seen it is not as difficult this time around, and I feel like if Scuba felt if he was under any real threat, he would just try and send it into a corner. I have noticed Scuba's had to lift off as he comes through the fast part of Sector 1, through 3 and 4, and I think if he felt like he had the need to, he'd just stay flat through there and have a go into the 5 and 6 chicane, because then obviously Perpetuum would have to try and fight back, and taking a suboptimal line, it might be a bit more awkward. I'm not sure Siege is thinking about those two up at the front at the moment, though. He's too busy thinking about trying to keep Graham behind him. He's done it on the first DRS straight. I think it's going to be a lot harder on this second one as Graham opens that rear wing up, goes round the outside. He is running a bit low, though, on ERS. Siege not choosing to use his, though, and that is Graham up onto the podium, which would be, to be honest, it'd be a nice way to finish the season if we had the top 3 in the championship on the podium.
Yeah, definitely would be a great way to end the season. And Graham, then, ever the consistent man, maybe not as strong in qualifying, didn't look to have maybe the pace at the start of this race, has come through nicely with other people's mistakes, and he's done well on this strategy so far. It looks like the alternate strategy, Recon really was the only one on the alternate strategy that had any pace before that contact with Scuba, but everyone else that's been on the alternate strategy has not really made it work. Maybe they pitted too early for the soft compound tyres, but Siege kind of has been stuck with Graham this entire race, even after that spin on the first lap. And Charlie hasn't really made a lot of progress either, despite him being up in 5th place. Most of that progress has been through other people's mistakes, so the alternate strategy hasn't looked that strong here.
No, definitely, and I'm not sure if it was recompeting later, because I seem to remember Siege pitted around the same time as well, so maybe it's just the initial first couple of laps. As you said a few laps ago, they had so much better pace on those soft tyres, and then it just seems to wear off, because Siege is now actually struggling to stay within DRS range of Graham. I think he's just about managed to do that. In fact, no, he was actually behind at the detection point, so Charlie might be putting Siege under more pressure here than Siege is putting Graham. So those softs really seem to have worn on the Mercedes car, especially because he's been battling. He'll have been caught in a lot more dirty air and just pushing them that extra bit harder.
Yeah, we definitely saw that with Scuba as well, probably a lap 4 of this race where he was leading and then got overtaken by Perpetuum, and Perpetuum pulled a big gap almost immediately on him, as Charlie is going to try and go for the move on Siege, but I just don't think he's fast enough in a straight line, and Siege did have DRS down the second straight. Remember, there's 2 separate DRS detection points for the straights on this track, so that saves Siege, but you can see Charlie has just got so much more grip. He nearly ran straight into the back of the Mercedes there, and the final part of that triple chicane. But we're on the final lap, only 2 corners to go in this season. Perpetuum has done everything he can to try and win this championship, but it's not going to be enough. Around the final corner, Perpetuum wins the final round of the season, takes fastest lap on the final lap, but Scuba is going to win the championship by a single point. He did everything he needed to do, held on, got a little bit lucky with the contact with Recon earlier on, but that saved Scuba's championship, and he is the first champion of the TTML Sprint League. Graham gets on the podium in the final round of the season and secures 3rd place in the standings, and AlphaTauri have secured the Manufacturers Championship with that drive from Graham as well. So great stuff from them. They steal it off of McLaren, who have led almost the entire way this season. AlphaTauri are your Manufacturers Championship. Siege couldn't hold on the softs. He gets 4th ahead of Charlie in 5th. Mays will cross the line in 6th. He did everything he could do as well, but Mercedes just falls short. Neymar will get across the line in 7th. He's going to do some donuts actually to finish off the season and finish off a great season for AlphaTauri as they pick up the team's championship. Neymar 7th in the final finisher. We had a lot of retirements in that race. It was a race of attrition, but Scuba did it. He held on by a single point. He wins the championship.
He does in the end. I was a bit worried there that Neymar was going to end up wiping a wheel off his car and Mercedes would end up winning the Constructors. All of a sudden, if that had happened. He got a bit too close for comfort for those walls at certain times. But yeah, Scuba, great job today. Under quite a lot of pressure, did everything that he had to. Commiserations to Perpetuum. You could argue that Perpetuum definitely, the last few races, had the pace over Scuba. And you've got to say, maybe last week, that USA qualifying where Perpetuum invalidated, broke his front wing on lap 1. From that point on, it was going to be very difficult for him. He did everything he could, but Scuba just kept finishing behind him. That was enough. And only one time this season, in fact, I think for both of these drivers, in fact, only one time this season did they finish a race and not finish on the podium. Just fantastic consistency from the pair of them. Either one would have been a deserved champion, but in the end there could only been one, and Scuba's got the championship, and it was a fantastic season.
Absolutely fantastic season. You've got to say there's a lot of times this season where Perpetuum could have won this championship. Penalties maybe losing him race wins at certain tracks. But Perpetuum's had great pace all season long, but Scuba was just consistent enough, barely made any mistakes this season. As you say, has been on the podium in every race bar one in all the races that he's taken part in. So incredible consistency from both drivers, great pace as well. But Scuba is your champion then. Perpetuum wins the race, Scuba finishes second, and Graham on the podium secures third place in the standings as well. What a season for Graham. That's got to be one of his best seasons in league racing. Siege in fourth ahead of Charlie fifth. Maze and Neymar your final finisher. Recon, Bezerud, The Law, Cam and Faxand all retired from that race. A lot of retirees in that race. Recon could have had a shot of winning this race, but contact with the back of Scuba's Red Bull at the triple chicane took him out of the running completely and somewhat saved possibly Scuba this championship. So I think Scuba maybe might have to send maybe a little thank you letter to Recon after that race, because that could have helped him ever so slightly. But at the end of tonight, who's your driver of the day and who's your driver of the season?
Driver of the day, I'm going to have to go for Perpetuum, just because Paul will win fastest lap in both of the races, and fair play to him. We've seen him pick up a few penalties this season. He kept it nice and clean. Can you really go for anyone else than the champion, though, for driver of the season?
I mean, you absolutely can't, no. I was going to say, if anyone did go for anyone else, then that would be a little bit odd, but I think maybe the only other person you could think of was maybe Graham, because he somewhat outperformed maybe our expectations. But yeah, what a season it's been from Scuba. He definitely gets my driver of the season. And then I agree with the driver of the day today as well. I think Perpetuum did everything that he could, but he was just shadowed today by Scuba, and that's all that Scuba needed to do. I think he recognised that's all he needed to do to win the championship, and he walks away with it. And that is where the first season of the TTML Sprint League is going to finish off, guys. Thank you so much to everyone that's tuned in to us for the entire season, and thank you to all the drivers as well that have taken part in this season. Tune into League Racing TV for the rest of the week for, obviously, the start of the third season of TTML. My word, third season already. It's come at us from absolutely nowhere. I feel like it's obviously divisions 2 and 3 take place tomorrow, and 4 and 5 on Friday, and then this time next week on Wednesday will be the next round of the Esports Masters League. So tune into that from Britain, I believe, is the next round of the season. So that will be next Wednesday. But from myself and Luke Etheridge, let me get my words out. Luke Etheridge, there we go. Thank you so much to joining us for the entire season, and we will see you very soon. Thank you very much, and goodbye.